The moon is falling. Right now, as you read this, it is constantly being pulled toward Earth, accelerating inward every second, while its sideways motion keeps making it miss, pulled by the same force that yanks a coffee cup off a table when your elbow catches it. That's not a metaphor. Gravity has the moon in its grip, and it never lets go. So, here's the thing that should bother you. If the moon is genuinely falling toward us, and has been for over 4 billion years, why hasn't it hit us yet? Why isn't there a moon-shaped crater where the Pacific Ocean is? The answer is one of those rare ideas that, once it clicks, quietly rearranges how you see the sky. And it starts with a mistake almost everyone makes without realizing it. Let's begin with what your gut tells you, because your gut isn't stupid. It's just working with incomplete information. When you think about gravity, you probably picture things falling straight down. Drop a rock, it goes down. Trip on a curb, you go down. Everything gravity touches seems to move in one direction, toward the center of whatever big thing is pulling it. So when someone says the moon is being pulled by Earth's gravity, the natural image is a straight line. Earth here, moon there, and a force stretched between them like an invisible rope. And if there's a rope pulling the moon toward us, then surely eventually it should arrive. That's the intuition. It feels airtight. And it's wrong, but not for the reason you might expect. It's wrong because it's only looking at half the picture. Here's the half it's missing. The moon isn't sitting still. It's moving. Fast. It's traveling sideways, across your line of sight, at roughly a kilometer per second. That's about 3,600 kilometers an hour, and it has been moving at that kind of speed since long before animals ever stepped onto land. So the real situation isn't a rope pulling a stationary ball. It's a ball that's already racing sideways while something tries to yank it inward. And when you combine those two things, motion sideways and a pull inward, you don't get a collision. You get a circle. Or close enough to one. I want to make this concrete because this is the exact spot where most explanations wave their hands and hope you nod along. There's a thought experiment that Isaac Newton actually used to explain this, and it's still the clearest way to see it. Imagine standing on top of an impossibly tall mountain, so tall it pokes above the atmosphere, so there's no air to slow anything down. Now imagine you have a cannon up there, and you fire a cannonball horizontally, straight out, parallel to the ground far below. What happens? The cannonball flies forward, but gravity is pulling it down the whole time, so it curves and eventually lands some distance away. Nothing surprising yet. Now, load more gunpowder. Fire it faster. It flies farther before it hits the ground, curving as it goes, but it still comes down. Faster still, and now the ground itself is starting to matter, because the Earth is round. As the cannonball races forward, the surface of the planet is gently curving away beneath it. And that's the key move. Follow it slowly. The cannonball is falling toward the Earth, but the Earth's surface is curving away at the same time. If you fire the cannonball at just the right speed, something remarkable happens. The rate at which it falls exactly matches the rate at which the ground curves away beneath it. So the cannonball keeps falling and never gets any closer to the surface. It falls around the planet instead of into it. It comes all the way around and hits you in the back of the head. Congratulations, you've just put an object into orbit. That's all an orbit is. It's not some special anti-gravity state. It's falling. It's continuous, endless falling that keeps missing the ground. Let that sit for a second, because it's genuinely strange the first time you really absorb it. The moon is falling toward Earth constantly. Astronauts on the space station are falling toward Earth constantly. That's actually why they float. Not because there's no gravity up there, there's plenty, almost as much as there is on the ground. They float because they and their entire spacecraft are falling together, all at the same rate, in a giant curve around the planet. They're in a perpetual, gentle plummet that never arrives. If you've ever felt that lurch in your stomach at the top of a roller coaster drop, that momentary weightlessness, that's a tiny sip of what astronauts feel all the time. They're just falling in a direction that never runs out of room. So the moon doesn't crash into us for the same reason the cannonball doesn't crash into the mountain. It's moving sideways fast enough that its constant fall becomes a constant curve. Pull without sideways motion is a collision. Sideways motion without pull is a straight line off into empty space, but pull and sideways motion together, balanced just right, is an orbit. Take away either one, and the whole arrangement falls apart. If you could somehow freeze the moon in place, stop its sideways motion entirely, it would drop toward us like a stone down a well. And yes, that would be catastrophic. And if you could switch off Earth's gravity, the moon wouldn't hover there peacefully. It would fly off in a straight line tangent to its orbit and disappear into the dark, never to return. The moon stays because these two things are locked in a kind of standoff that is held steady for billions of years. Now, a careful person might push back here, and they'd be right to. If the balance has to be so precise, isn't that suspicious? How did the moon just happen to end up moving at exactly the perfect speed for a stable orbit? That's a fair question, and the honest answer is that the balance doesn't have to be razor perfect. There's a whole range of speeds that produce stable orbits. Move a little slower, and you get a tighter, more oval-shaped orbit that swings in close and back out. Move a little faster, and you get a wider, stretched-out ellipse. In fact, most orbits in the universe aren't perfect circles at all. They're ellipses, ovals, some barely oval, and some dramatically so. The moon's orbit is slightly egg-shaped, which is why it looks a little bigger some nights than others. Only if an object is moving far too slowly for its distance does the orbit decay into a real fall to the surface, and only if it's moving too fast does it break free entirely and escape. Between those two extremes is a comfortable window, and the moon sits well inside it. It didn't need a miracle. It needed to fall within a fairly forgiving range, and it did, the way most surviving orbits do, because the ones that didn't already crashed or flew away long ago. What we see today is what was stable enough to still be here. There's a deeper layer to this, and it's worth peeling back, because so far I've been describing gravity as a pull, as a force reaching across space like an invisible hand. That's the way Newton pictured it. And for almost everything you'll ever encounter, Newton's picture works beautifully. It's how we send spacecraft to other planets. It's accurate enough to land probes on comets. But it left one thing unexplained that quietly bothered people for centuries. How does gravity actually reach across empty space? How does the Earth know the moon is there to pull on it across nearly 400,000 kilometers of nothing? Newton himself was uneasy about this. He described what gravity does with stunning precision, but he admitted he couldn't say what it truly was. The answer came from Einstein, and it reframes the whole picture in a way that's honestly more elegant, even if it's harder to hold in your head. In Einstein's picture, gravity is not a simple invisible pull. It is the bending of space-time itself. It's a bending of space itself. Picture a stretched rubber sheet, flat and taut. Now set a heavy bowling ball in the middle. The sheet sags, forming a dip around the ball. Now roll a marble across that sheet. As it passes near the dip, it curves, not because the bowling ball is pulling it with a rope, but because the surface it's rolling on is warped. The marble is just following the straightest path it can on a curved surface. That's the essence of Einstein's insight. Massive objects like the Earth bend the space around them, and the moon isn't being tugged inward so much as it's coasting along the straightest possible path through space that has been curved by Earth's presence. I should be honest about the limits of that rubber sheet image, because it's a helpful picture, but it can also mislead. It uses gravity. The sheet sags because of Earth's gravity pulling the bowling ball down to explain gravity, which is a bit circular if you take it too literally. And it shows space as a two-dimensional sheet when the real bending happens in 3 dimensions of space and also in time, which is much harder to draw. But the core takeaway survives the simplification. And it's this: the moon isn't fighting against a pull. It's traveling as freely and straightly as it can through a region of space that the Earth has quietly reshaped. Its orbit is less like a ball on a leash and more like a car following the curve of a banked racetrack. The track is bent, so the path is bent, and the car isn't struggling against anything. It's just going where the road goes. But here's where the story stops being a tidy, frozen picture and starts to move, because the moon's orbit isn't actually permanent. It's changing, slowly, quietly, measurably. The moon is drifting away from us. Every year it moves about 3.8 centimeters farther from Earth, roughly the rate your fingernails grow. We know this with real precision, not from theory, but from measurement. When astronauts visited the moon, they left behind mirrors on its surface. And to this day, scientists bounce lasers off those mirrors and time how long the light takes to return. That's how we can say, with confidence, that the moon is inching away. So the balance I described isn't a static, eternal thing. It's slowly, gently shifting. Why is it drifting? This is one of my favorite parts because it connects the moon to something you can watch at the beach. The moon's gravity is what raises the ocean tides. It tugs the water on the side of Earth facing it, creating a bulge. But the Earth is spinning much faster than the moon orbits, so that bulge of water gets dragged slightly ahead of the moon's position by our planet's rotation. That offset bulge has its own tiny gravitational pull, and it tugs the moon forward, nudging it into a slightly higher orbit, little by little. And there's a beautiful trait in this. As the moon gets nudged outward, the same interaction acts as a brake on Earth's spin. Our days are getting longer, by a tiny fraction of a second per century. Hundreds of millions of years ago, a day on Earth was noticeably shorter than 24 hours. The moon and the Earth are locked in a slow, patient exchange. One drifting outward, the other winding down, both connected by the very tides you can watch roll in. So let's return to where we started, to that unsettling image of the moon falling toward us and never arriving. It turns out the falling was never the problem. The falling is the whole point. The moon has been falling toward Earth for longer than there have been continents, longer than there has been life, and it will keep falling for as long as this arrangement holds. It just falls sideways, endlessly, tracing a curve through space that Earth itself has shaped, missing us by the same margin every single time. Not because gravity is weak, and not because something is holding the moon back, but because motion and gravity found a balance so stable it has outlasted nearly everything. And I think there's something quietly worth sitting with in that. We tend to imagine stability as stillness, as things staying put, holding their ground, not moving. But the most stable thing in your sky is stable precisely because it never stops moving. The moon doesn't hang up there. It races constantly, and its constant motion is the only reason it stays. Stop, and it falls. That's the trade. So the next time you catch the moon low on the horizon, remember that you're not looking at something resting peacefully in the dark. You're looking at something in a perpetual dive, falling toward you at this very moment, and forever just barely missing. That near miss, repeated without end for 4 billion years, is the reason it's still there at all.